Introducing Tony and Other People, a podcast. Here's your host, Tony Levesque.
Tim Everson. How's it going?
Good, Tony. How are you?
Not bad. I'm trying to figure out how we've actually met, and I think it must be through the radio station.
I think
somehow.
so. Well, I think originally it was, because I'm friends with Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, I've known your mom and your dad for quite a few years
Right.
from the shop. I mean, that's been a good 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
You love it when your dad, as a matter of fact, probably one of the biggest moments, or just one of the coolest things I can remember was, when I was working in Boondocks. I worked level sport until 5, and then I go to Boondocks and work from 7 till 3 in the morning. And I
didn't know you worked there.
Yeah, yep. I was part-time manager, server, bartender, just a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Anything but cook. I can eat like you wouldn't believe, but cooking we don't.
I'm the same way.
But your dad had a Honda jacket made up, and he was so proud of it. And he's like, "Hey, come here, check this out." And it was really cool.
My dad has been a Honda man for a long, long time.
Yes, he has.
Probably since he was a little kid, I'd imagine.
Yep. Well, as a matter of fact, I'd be willing to bet that one of his first Hondas probably came from the old Agway in Lions Falls, because years and years ago, there was a Honda shop right next to where the Lions Falls Pharmacy is now, and I don't think anybody's in the Agway building anymore. Hills, I think, were the last ones that were there, but that was a Honda shop back in the 60s and 70s.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
I know my dad always tells stories of when he was a kid that his brother always had money, so he would buy an old dirt bike or four-wheeler or something, and my dad was really good with his hands, so he'd do whatever he could to fix it up, and then ride it around for a little while, and his brother would sell it.
Right.
And then, get a new one. So it kind of built my dad's career, because he worked for close to 30 years at Kraft and in the maintenance department, which is, especially in the 70s and 80s, you had to know how to do everything to be a maintenance guy.
Right.
Now they're, a little more refined where, you kind of stuck to your one machine or whatever. Right. But, yeah, it really started him off, I think, working on Hondas, and not just Hondas. Oh, man, he used to tell me some of the names of the Japanese motorcycles he had, and I can't even remember right now, but he's worked on everything. Yeah,
he was, in talking with him, he would tell stories about different things. Well, like the Fiero that he built.
Uh-huh. Right. The Fiera cane.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Honda, it was a Hurricane.
Yep.
And a Fiero.
Right.
So the Hurricane motorcycle was in the back end of the car.
Right.
Yeah. With a Fiero in the front. But I don't know if he ever completed that. I don't think it ever really ran. That was kind of his last project before he got sick.
I think that if your dad, and there was a guy that I met who was really one of my heroes, Phil Lee. I don't know if you've ever met Phil or knew Phil. He lived over in Naumburg. Mm-hmm. And back when I was 16 years old and started racing snowmobiles, I heard about this guy named Phil Lee. And he lived over in Naumburg, so I looked him up, went over there one day, and I pull in, and there's this older gentleman with a border collie as his sidekick out working in the garage, and told him about how I raced a 1971 Arctic Cat Lynx 282, and I wanted help with it. He goes, yeah. He goes, I just got one of those magazines in the mail the other day on that. And he goes over, I'm thinking, how in the hell would you end up with a magazine on 1971 in the mail the other day? Mm. He goes over and he blows off this old magazine, and it was from 1974. And he goes, oh, geez. He goes, boy, time flies. He goes, I could have thought they just came last week. I'm like, holy cow. But again, Phil used to build some pretty crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. He had taken an old Alouette snowmobile chassis and put a rear wheel in the back and the whole 9 yards.
Uh-huh.
It was just... But, he taught me how to clutch snowmobiles by listening to him, not by, tacks or RPMs. Told me the whole premise behind it. Learned so much from him. He was just a great guy. And I always think, like with your dad and Phil, because of the type of stuff they wanted to build, be the same way.
Nothing beats those old school mechanics, because it's like when Ford come out with the universal parts. You know what I mean? Everything was 9/16 or whatever. It seems like back in the day, if you could work on one thing, you could figure out another. And nowadays, it's
Right. Well, everything's electronics. It's all computers, and which really scares a lot of people. But for the most part, it really has simplified things. It really kind of takes the guesswork. For example, I had taken a few years ago. I had taken a 2009 Foreman 500 with power steering on trade, and of course, whenever power steering is fairly new. So people are like, oh, man, I don't want that. It's just one more thing to break. Yeah. Well, I've never seen one go bad. And I always tell people there's 2 times where I thought that we had an issue with power steering. Come to find out we've never had one. The first one was one of the first machines that we had sold. The guy called back like a week later and said, hey, the light comes on and goes off, and then my power steering works, then it doesn't. So we're like, oh, my gosh, we got a problem with power steering. So we call Honda. Honda says, did you guys read the owner's manual? I don't know why. Well, because it's supposed to do that. It's a self-diagnosing system, so if it overheats, it will shut itself down so it doesn't hurt anything. We're like, so it's supposed to do that? We're like, yeah. Oh, okay, that's cool. And then the second one was that 500 that I took it on trade, and the thing steered so hard. And we're like, all the power steering's messed up on it. And then I don't know why, but I woke up in the morning, or I woke up in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, wait a minute, that thing does a check. There's no power steering light on in this thing. So I go to work the next day, and I said, guys, I don't think there's anything wrong with that power steering on that Foreman. They're like, why? I said, because the light comes on, does a system check. If there was something that was bad, it would stay on.
Right.
But there's nothing that's wrong with it. So sure enough, it was a stupid ball joint that ended up being all buggered up, and that's what the problem was. So they went ahead to put a new ball joint in it. Things steered as smooth as butter. I mean, we had this thing set for like a year because nobody wanted to work on it. Like, I'm not working on that power steering. I'm not doing that. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, it's not the power steering to begin with. There was never an issue with that. So just one of those things where sometimes, yes, as technology grows, things get a little bit more complicated and scary, but mostly in our minds. For the most part, it's pretty basic.
Well, and a lot of times when any new technology comes out, there's bugs to be fixed.
Right.
And that's what everyone has in their mind. I mean, even when you go to look at a new car, I don't want that. That's just more to go wrong with it. But as humans, we're scared to death of change.
Right.
And that's what it is. I mean, the big picture is we're evolving, and machines are evolving, and that's because of us. We're making that happen.
Oh, sure.
Like with older people that don't want to use a computer, they're going to be lost. Well, I'm already lost, and I work with a computer every day.
Well, now let's be honest here, Tony. We just had a conversation because I told you that I wasn't for sure what a podcast was because I never, So
I like that though.
That's on me. I mean,
I can do whatever I want and say, "Oh, that was a really great podcast."
Yeah. What was that?
You would never know.
But you're absolutely right. But and again, going back to when I worked at Boondocks, it would be really funny because you think that kids are bad when it comes to to talking on your phone or like playing on your phone. Senior citizens are just as bad.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure that cell phones have saved so many marriages, or either that, or I don't know if some of these people even know that they're married. It's just this person that they're hanging out with while they're on their phone.
Right.
I mean, who the hell is this
What
person?
are you looking at? Oh, the internet. What are you looking at? Yeah, the internet.
Right. Are you playing solitaire? Or are you? No, I'm on Facebook.
It's one of my favorite lines from Bob's Burgers, and his wife comes in and he's on the phone, and she's like, "What you reading? The internet?"
Oh, jeez.
It's what we're all reading now,
right?
But I think it's really cool too that certain things always stay the same. There's still a newspaper. I mean, we live in a town where there's still a newspaper, which is Loudville's a small town.
It is.
I don't know how well they're doing, but people are still buying it.
They are, and again, a part of my job at Loudville Sport and Farm is to manage our advertising. We have to go ahead and figure out who is going to buy our product. Where do you put your money? Because advertising is not cheap.
Right.
So you have to go ahead, and so there's this whole big thing that goes along with advertising, and that's really a lot of it. And people always can tell you print is dead, print is dead, print is dead. Well, I'm sure it probably is most places, but I do try to go ahead and support, the Watertown Daily Times and Journal Republican a lot of it is because of the people that they employ there. You know, like Yvonne Hooper has been my sales rep for the last 10 years, and Terry's for God knows how long before that.
Right.
Does a wonderful job, you know, again, makes things very easy. She's there every week, you know, so those are the kind of people, and I probably don't advertise there as much as I should, but it's not, you can't just give your money, you know, it's just like people don't come in and just give me money and say, hey, I'm not getting anything for it, but at the same time, like with our demographic, most of the people who buy the type of utility ATVs and side-by-sides and things like that that we sell are anywhere from mid-20s to 65, 70, 75, 80 years old. I mean, I sold a Pioneer 1000 last week to a gentleman who was 83 years old. You know, a Pioneer 1000, 66 miles an hour top end, 83 years old. I didn't tell him that when he came in to buy it because there wasn't...
He'll figure it out.
Well, that wasn't really what he was... He'll never... God forbid, I hope he never goes that fast with that. But, you know, he was more concerned with the other features that the Pioneer 1000 had. But it's just kind of funny, too, because people think that a lot of people, you know, who... They look at ATVs and side-by-sides as these young, hell-raising kids. And I can remember back 15 years ago when I started working at D&D, well, almost 20 years ago, when I started working at D&D Power Sports, I couldn't believe how many older people had come in. I can't say older people, but like people who are retired. And a majority of the people who buy these are looking, you know, they want... you know, to pick berries, you know, to go out and
do yard work. And,
you know, side-by-sides now are getting to be the biggest thing because the side-by-side really fits everybody within every age group.
Right.
You know, it doesn't matter how young or how old you are. Everybody has a use. If you are young, you want a side-by-side because you have kids.
Right.
And it's easy to put them in, easy to get them out. They enjoy it.
Or seat belts on it.
Exactly. You know, there's a lot of safety features, ROPS, you know, the rollover protection systems. So there's a lot of things. If you're older, you would buy a side-by-side because you can, it's easier to get in and out of than an ATV where you would swing your leg over and so on and so forth.
Right.
If you
a little
are
more
single,
stable too.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. And if you are single, you'll buy a side-by-side because you can take your cat or dog along with you.
Right.
Plenty of room, you know, I mean, it's, and all these things have always kind of come up, but it's one of those things where I really think that this year we will end up selling more side-by-sides than ATVs, which is really surprising because New York State doesn't have a classification for side-by-sides. Like, according to New York State, side-by-sides don't exist. They're not a thing.
Right.
But it's really kind of funny that they don't exist, but they won't hesitate to give you a ticket for driving one.
Right.
But yet they don't want to recognize, you know, so people are like, well, do I need to wear a helmet? I don't know.
Maybe.
Well, should I register it? Well, you can't. Well, what is it? Well, I don't know. Technically, I mean, for all we know, it could be an unidentified flying object. Nobody really knows what a side-by-side is in New York because technically they don't exist. But they're buying them, and I think even the law enforcement and, you know, government officials.
And,
I mean, DEC, I think, are about the only ones that will really give you a ticket for them. But technically, the way that I look at people ask me all the time, I mean, like me being a salesman, I can't give them, say, well, you don't have to worry about this because God forbid if somebody should get pulled over, like, well, you know, Tim at Level Sports said I shouldn't have to worry about this. So my answer for everything when it comes to side-by-sides is it's a gray area. You know, it's like Polish cooking. You ask 100 different people, you're going to get 100 different opinions. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
You know, nobody really knows. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I can tell you other
state
experiences.
Needs to figure out how to make money with it, and then they're
already losing a pile of money with it. I mean, they really are. You know, it's just really, I get thinking about this stuff, and it frustrates me because you remember back in the Great Depression how Roosevelt had came out with like the Civilian Conservation Corps, and they basically, the government had made programs to make jobs. You know, they would basically, you know, well, we're going to go out and we're going to plant all the stuff and we're going to do all of these things. But nowadays, our government, like, man, you know, our town workers and our state workers, they have to go out and fix these trails that these ATVs and side-by-sides, even though they really don't tear them up, but, you know, if there's maintenance that has to be done, they make a big deal out of it. Like, so let me get this right. You're complaining because you're making your people who you're paying do their jobs.
Right.
yeah, that makes sense. You know, really, I mean, it bothers me. You know, like most of Lewis County is state land. There's a lot of great state land, like Confusion Flats. I mean, back when we were kids.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I can remember that's where I spent majority of my time, and I loved being one of those respectful kids. You know, I had an old Honda 200 3-wheeler that I pretty much drove everywhere I went.
Didn't everyone?
Yeah, it's a prerequisite. You cannot live in.
Everyone had a Big Red or a
185S or a 200 or
a Suzuki. Yep. We always had a couple Suzukis and a Honda 200X.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I had 200. I never had a 200X. That'd been a nice one to get my
that was
hands
my
on.
dad's. He didn't drive that one.
Really? Yeah.
Those kids got the Suzukis, the quad runners. Yep.
Because he didn't like you guys that much. He kept the Honda for himself.
Right.
But you know, I can remember driving through there and seeing horses and understanding that, you know, this is a right, not a privilege.
Right.
And I'd pull over, shut my machine off, and have a nice conversation with them as I was a, I don't know, 13, 14, 15-year-old kid. You know, wave, they'd go by and go on my merry way and then go out, and it was never an issue.
Right.
And then in 2006, New York State shut down all state land to ATVs.
Right.
You can't drive, you know, so Confusion Flats is probably, you know, and then up in Balfour, like Bald Mountain Road, there's all sorts of different easement lands and all this that are perfectly groomed. You know, we have handicap access horse down at Cat's Paw Lake there. I remember shortly after when that whole thing, or before it got shut down, we drove down there and there was a handicap accessible horse ramp at Cat's Paw Lake. I don't know if you've ever been to Cat's Paw Lake, but there is no way that a handicapped person is going to get to Cat's Paw Lake unless they're on not a horse.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's just not going to happen. So it's just really kind of funny how where things like that go. I mean, it really irritates me. Do you think that'll
change eventually? Money. I'm sure 90% of it is.
It is.
Can we make revenue off of this? Then we'll do something about it.
Yes, I mean, there is. But the problem is that we are such a small piece of the pie up here in the North Country that there's a lot more issues. I mean, like, they think that we get everything up here for free. I mean, that's literally what. And, like, as far as side-by-sides, the people in the cities, our government officials in the cities think that side-by-sides, and this is actually comes from one of our legislators that told me this. They really think that they are mini, like, tanks, like army tanks. Like, they think that if they legalize side-by-sides, that us people up here in the north are going to take over the cities.
Oh, man. You have gun turrets and stuff on the ones you sell? Or?
No, I don't. So it's just crazy. You know, like, a lot of this stuff really bothers me. And, you know, I will lay at bed at night because it's my livelihood.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's...
And a lot of people's. I mean, in different ways. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the bars up here count on that business.
Oh, sure.
And I would love to get a vehicle out on the trails, but it scares me a little bit come these big events with out-of-towners and not knowing, you know, I grew up on a four-wheeler and dirt bike, so I'm safe on there. I'd take my 4-year-old on the back of a dirt bike if my wife would let me.
Right.
You know, but it is kind of, you don't know getting out on those trails. And
I think that's a notion that a lot of people think is whenever people think ATVs, they think that it's the Snurt Run or something like that all the time, and that's not really the case. Yeah. Even still, I mean, I've been on the Snurt Run a good number of times. I've had very, very few issues. I mean, you know, just you don't. Yes, there's a lot of people out there. Yes, it can get a little bit crazy, but at the same point, I don't know. I mean, like I said, it's not like that a majority of the time.
Right.
You know, I mean, it really isn't. My in-laws, they finally got back into riding ATVs, and earlier on the summer, before we got busy, really, really busy, we were able to get out quite a bit, and it was great to see them. And, you know, my father-in-law says to me, he goes, "Bubba, man," he goes, this is great. Because I try to get him into a side-by-side. And I'm like, I took a Pioneer 500 down there for him to drive, and he drove, and he liked it. He goes, "Bubba, just got to have them handlebars. Got to have them handlebars. That's what I want."
Yep.
Hey, that's okay.
Yeah.
You know.
My parents got the side-by-side a couple years
ago.
Yeah,
that's right. They got a Pioneer 500.
I really did not enjoy driving it because as soon as they got it, I'm like, oh, let me take that for a spin. And so used to four-wheelers and dirt bikes, and I got on that. I'm like, no, this is not fun. But now I go down there, and my daughter loves to ride the 4-wheeler, but she really likes the side-by-side because she can see.
Mm-hmm.
She's sitting right next to me. She's seeing the same view I am, not trying to peek around me,
Right.
And because of that, and I've gotten used to it a little bit, and I know what it can do and what it can't do.
Right.
I really enjoy it. I don't know if I would get one because we don't have enough land or things to do on it here to really
and you're busy
use it as a workhorse.
Right.
I mean, I definitely want something to plow my driveway with, but a 4-wheeler I can go tear ass with and, have a little more fun.
Oh, yeah.
I think. So I saw on Facebook the other day that it's been a long time since you've been on a motorcycle.
Yeah.
And you sell them all the time.
I do. And, I would catch all sorts of crap from people.
Yeah, they got to mess with you at the shop.
Yeah. Oh, they do all the time. Well, because, so let me tell you my 2-wheel history.
Okay.
All right, because you'll appreciate this. So the very first dirt bike or whatever that I ever drove, my friend Brian Villeneuve had an old DR 100.
Yep.
Came over to the house, and I said, hey, I want to jump on that.
I always get scared when I see Villeneuve.
Well, yeah, you should.
I'm like, oh, what are we going to get into?
He has the XR650L now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you should be scared. So the DR, so I jump in as DR 100, and I didn't know that you lean to turn a bike like that. I've been on bicycles, driven bicycles and all sorts of stuff, but It's not the same. So I ended up driving that bike right through my neighbor's fence. I took out, they had a wooden fence that was made like with 1x8s, and I drove right through that, took out the 2 bottom rails, smashed right through it. So me being the stubborn, hard-headed person that I am, I don't know, and I wasn't old enough to, so maybe like a year later, I was on a back road, or I was up on Erie Canal Road in Belfort. My buddies all lived up there. Coming down, there's a YZ125, like a 1984, off to the side of the road. So I stopped. I picked it up for $300. I came home. Stan Spencer, who was kind of like, I was, 15, 16 years old. Stan was in his early 20s. He raced motocross, and he was a good, it's kind of like a hero to me at that age,
Mm-hmm.
So I called Stan up. We went up to the desert because I lived on number 4 road by the town barn. We went up there, and he basically taught me how to drive dirt bike.
There was air quotes there for people listening.
Yes, yeah, there's air quotes, yeah. Like I say taught, like very loosely, because if you've ever seen me with 2 wheels, it's still not pretty. So we went up there and spent an afternoon, and in the sand, I'd fall down, sand, so finally I got the hang of it. And I can remember a couple weeks later, my dad was out barbecuing, and we had like a loading ramp on the side of our garage. So I came from out back of the town barn, came ripping down through, decided to hit the loading ramp to jump it like a jump. As I was in midair, I look over and I see my dad's face drop, or my dad's chin drop to the ground as he's trying to cook steak on the grill. And then I proceeded to get my ass reamed. Don't you ever do anything like that again. So that's, and I spent the whole summer on the dirt biking, and it really had a lot of fun with it. And then, of course, in my fashion, I probably traded it. Actually, I do remember, I think I sold it to somebody else, and they had, a good time with it and the whole 9 yards. So then, years go by, and I was working at D&D, and I had taken a 2001 Ninja 250 in on trade. At that time, gas prices had gone to like $4 a gallon. So I think everybody in the world had an excuse to buy a motorcycle.
Sure.
Well, I jumped on that bandwagon. So I go home and I tell Chrissy, I says, hey, I just took in a 250 Ninja in on trade. My Dodge only gets like 10 miles a gallon. This thing's going to get like 60 miles a gallon. I think I should buy it. So she probably told me no, and I probably did it anyways. Matter of fact, I know I did it. And I proceeded to go out, and I drove it 7 times, and may or may not have crashed it 3 of those 7 times. And every single time it was my fault, and it was a lack of experience.
Right.
Like it was just a matter of being young and dumb. So the first time I was pulling out of the driveway, and I was a little bit skinnier back then, so my wedding ring actually was a little bit loose on my finger instead of bulging like it is now because I'm a little chubby. And so I went to take it off.
Happens
and
with age.
It does. Yeah. It does. I lose my hair and I get fat. What the hell do you want from me? So I go to take my wedding ring off as the bike is still moving out of the driveway, and it falls and it cracks the signal light. So I go ahead, put the bike back, get my truck drive home. Kristen says, "Where's your bike?" Well, I decided not to drive home tonight. Oh, okay. So I didn't tell her about the whole incident. Mm-hmm. Next time, I was on Fridays, used to go down and get the guys lunch from Get It and Go. And so I had my backpack. I went down, picked up lunch. And for God knows whatever reason, I was right at the four corners there by the post office in front of the courthouse. Took a left-hand turn, and I got on it, shifted while I was leaning to turn. Apparently you don't do that, because if you do, you'll have severe road rash on your legs and your elbow and smash your bike in the middle of town and have two old ladies come and help you pick it up. So that was the second time. The third time, I was on my way back to the shop at D&D to a customer worked late and wanted to pick up his four-wheeler that night. So that's a nice night. I'll drive the bike back. Well, I was on River Road, and I don't know why, but I was going around the corner, and the rule, like when you're riding motorcycles, now that I've taken my safety course and no such things, is you always look up. You always look to where you're going, because where your eyes go, your bike goes. Mm-hmm. And you always look to where you're going. Well, I didn't do that. I don't know why I was vapor locking, because, from riding motorcycle or ATVs and snowmobiles, I'm used to looking like down in front of me. Mm-hmm. You don't do that. And I vapor locked. I ended up going off on the toolies, smashed the crap out of my bike, ended up in the hospital that night. I still think I made it back and did the delivery. I have no recollection of how I got to the shop. I really don't know anything that happened that night, other than the fact that none of it was good. Mm-hmm. And so then when Kristen came to the hospital, she says, "You're getting rid of that damn bike." And I did. And then so when I started working at Level Sport and Farm, it was a big adjustment for me to sell motorcycles or move motorcycles, because at that point I was really kind of afraid of them. Mm-hmm. So after 10 years of working at Level Sport, I decided, I had two goals this year I wanted to get. One, I wanted to get my motorcycle license, and the second, I was going to get my pistol permit. That's what I want to do this year. Mm-hmm. So far, I've got my motorcycle license because I took the safety course, which now, during that safety course, I'm like, you're not supposed to do that? Well, I've done that before. Well, that's why that happened. No kidding. Well, I won't be doing that. So it's definitely anybody who's looking to get a motorcycle, I highly recommend. Right. It's $275, but it's the best money you'll ever spend.
Yeah. Because even probably experienced riders could benefit from
absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. And they do actually have different degrees of the course.
Right.
The one I took was just the basic rider safety course. Mm-hmm. It was 2 days. The gentleman who taught the course was Andy Bayshard down out of Port Lydon, which you must. Do you know Andy?
I don't.
He lived down on Canal
know the
Street.
Name, but yeah.
Oh, I sold him a PT Cruiser back in 2000 when I worked at.
Back when they were cool.
Yeah, back when they were cool. When I worked at Carbone's, and so and he's been in the shop, so he kind of knew me. So when I showed up at his course, he kind of looks at me and says, like everybody does, "You mean you don't have your motorcycle license and you've been selling bikes all this time?" Yes, Andy, that's exactly what I'm telling you. So, and he was a great instructor. I mean, absolutely wonderful. I mean, it was a great experience, and I highly recommend it to anybody.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've got a bike out in the garage, and I've been thinking, it's been out there forever. It was in my brother's garage for a few years, and just haven't had the time to put into it to make it.
Was it that Goldwing that he had?
No. This is a Honda 250. It's early 80s. We'll go
like
check it out.
Yeah.
We'll
you have my attention.
Yeah. It was my dad's bike. He bought it, and now he can't really ride. Which I got a little side story here the other day. From the other day. Dad hasn't, he's got Parkinson's, so he can't really. He's at the point where he doesn't have his license anymore. He can't really ride the four-wheeler, which, I mean, every day of his life before that, we were out there beating the shit out of them four-wheelers.
Right.
And so the other day, he was actually, because Parkinson's, I mean, throughout the day, you'll get moments where he's really lucid and really, with it and physically with it. Not for very long usually.
Right.
And not every day. But he'll get those moments. And I don't think my mom likes it because he gets a lot of energy, and then he's, all over the place. And,
right.
Hard to keep an eye on, basically. But we were all over there, and my dad hopped on one of the wheelers, and my mom's like, "Oh no!" I said, "Don't worry about it. I'll follow him around." And it was one that wasn't a crazy wheeler. So he hops on the wheeler, and you could tell in his face that he was just a little bit scared, which I've never seen my dad scared on a wheeler before.
Right.
But I was very happy to see that because I knew he wasn't going to just take off and go.
Right.
And he putted around the lawn. We went up over the hill into the woods a little bit. And when we got done, just the smile on his face.
Oh, yeah.
And for him, what did he say? That I can't think of the word right now, but he got some dignity back.
Yeah.
And that to me was worth it. I mean,
yeah.
I was doing circles around him literally while he was driving, just having a good time.
Sure.
And that just made his day. There's something about hopping on a four-wheeler or a dirt bike or side-by-side and just...
Oh, yeah.
Going wherever you want to go.
Well, and I'll tell you, it's funny that you say that because, my passion for ATVs, snowmobiles, ATVs, stems from back when we were kids. My parents, they never had any use for ATVs or whatever, but I used to harass the crap out of my dad. And one day, down the road from us, when I lived in Lawville, an ATC 90 came up for sale. I think it was $350. Dad, we gotta buy this. Dad, we gotta buy this. So finally, eventually, it's like Terry says, if you don't bug them, it'll never happen. So I bugged the crap out of them, and then finally we got it. Then we bought a 110, and we used to drive up to my grandfather's farm up on Nefsey Road and take off and just go down the road through the back fields. We knew where we could go, where we couldn't go. Mm-hmm. And then, but I can just remember feeling like with what you say, there's a freedom. Mm-hmm. There's a... And then, when I got to be in high school, as a young adolescent, think about this. Kids nowadays, they play Xbox. They don't really get out, and we've seen a decline in, dirt bike and ATV sales to the younger generation. They don't really, you're going to start to see a lot of your younger generation won't even have licenses anymore because they don't need to because they have Uber and so on and so forth. So there's just not that excitement there. Like, back when we were kids, that's what it revolved around. Mm-hmm. But like I was saying, I've dabbled in writing for a little bit, here and there, especially back when I was younger. I can remember writing a poem about the way that I felt, when I was out on a snowmobile or an ATV, where to turn, left. And I still have it tucked away somewhere. I know I do. But there's just I can remember when you're an adolescent, you have this, for lack of a better term, rage built up, because you're confused. There's life changes. Your body's
changing. There's a lot of things that anger you, and you want to, get that out in some way.
Exactly, and that's how and that was my release for that was out on my ATV, whether it was to go over to the Verkler sand pit and climb up the hills, what we call the 500 hill, or we had different smaller tracks here or there, out back in the sand. There was all these different. And having a three-wheeler, which was like a death machine, and again, air quotes again.
Yeah.
But you learned body language. You learned how to ride one. You learned how to drive aggressively, and so it's just like you said. There's a freedom. There's a feeling. It was 26 miles from my house to my buddy Rod Wolf. He lived up in Belfort. It's 26 miles one way from my house. Actually, I think it was 26 miles to his camp. So it was a good 20 miles to his place. And I would think nothing of jumping on my 1982 Honda 200 and taking off to Rod's. And my mom would be like, "Hey, where are you going?" "I'm going to go see Rod." And like, okay, but how I found Rod's house was we got lost one day. Rod came down the house with his three-wheeler, and we had got on, and we'd come to a road, and I'd say left or right. I don't know, left. We knew we had a full tank of gas, and we had no place to be. And that was how I learned the roads of Lewis County. I learned, this, that.
Back then you could.
Yeah.
Branningham. We used to go up to Branningham. We'd drive from my parents' house in Lions Falls and take all the back roads up Burdick's Crossing, drive right through the town of Gregg.
Right.
And nobody gave a shit.
Nobody batted an eye. Nope.
There are so many different places you can go, places that you wouldn't normally go,
right,
or be able to get to.
Right.
You can now. You just got to hike for half a day.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, even still, I can remember, and I was talking to Scott Gillian the other day about back when I was 14, 15 years old, we had our own little Watson, like our neighborhood kids, we got together our own volleyball team because on Wednesday nights they used to play volleyball up to Pine Tree.
Right.
Well, that's what our transportation was. I can remember coming in the house one day at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Of course, I was only like, I don't know, 15 years old.
Yep.
And me and my parents, of course, you didn't have cell phones. You couldn't call and check in. But I would be like, hey, Mom, we're going to go up to Pine Tree and play volleyball. Well, what do you mean? Well, there's a tournament where we all chip in $5, and then we play against people who are usually considerably older than us. Normally, we get our butts whipped, and then I come home, and I'm home at a reasonable hour. Well, one time, the stars aligned, and things went well, and I think we got in the money, where we actually won money, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning when I come home. But that's how we used to get there, was all of us kids would get on our three-wheelers, and we would leave from Watson at the town barn and go and travel some roads, but then most of it was through Confusion Flats, up through Eatonville, down Van Arnhem Road, and right out to the Pine Tree.
Yep.
And we'd play volleyball, and then we'd come back down home the same way. I mean, we weren't getting any trouble. We weren't drinking, doing anything wrong. And then, during the week, we'd all get together, and we'd go down behind the Watson Town Barn at the park, and we would practice, volleyball, and that's what we would do. I mean, it was a good time. I mean, but that was the type of stuff that you did as kids that you just don't see that stuff anymore.
Right.
I mean, you really don't.
And it's not, you weren't hurting anyone.
Right.
You weren't getting in trouble.
Right.
When I was in school, it was all the parties. Everyone would go to the parties. I wasn't that guy. I'd get a hold of the neighbors. We'd hop on four-wheelers, and we'd go down behind the Valley Brook Drive-In and bring a radio.
Oh, yeah.
And sit there on our wheelers and watch a movie.
Yeah.
You just turn in the radio wherever it was supposed to be.
Sure.
And sit there until the police would drive by, and then you drive back, down through Lyons Falls.
Right.
Which was really funny because where the trail come out was right at Gary Jock's house.
Yeah. Yes.
Who was the
railroad
sheriff
bed
at the time.
Yep. And the railroad bed, which is a part of the Lewis County ATV trail system that runs from Glenfield all the way down to Lyons Falls, now is an open ATV trail. And that is probably my most favorite trail.
It's a beautiful ride down.
Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. Down
right
at the other
river.
end. Yep. And then, of course, that canopy down at the railroad trestle down. Once you get closer to Lyons Falls down, where the spin-off, where the snowmobile trail cuts off, there's that rock cut that's kind of right there.
Yep.
That is absolutely just perfect and beautiful. I'm so thankful that they've opened that up because, like, my daughter Sky and I, that's what we'll do. I mean, it'll be a Wednesday night. We'll jump on the wheelers and we'll take off and we'll head down to Stewart's and grab ice cream. I think legally we can get as far as Boondocks because the trail comes out there, but I'm not for sure what the jurisdiction is on that little side trail that goes down to Stewart's. But again, we probably don't hurt anything. Come to the...
See, we used to, before Stewart's was there, hop right up over the road and go down behind Cataldo's.
Oh.
And that was such a mud pit down there that it was a gamble whether you were going to make it through depending on the weather.
Right.
And there were so many times we'd have to pull people out of it because it was either that or go down the sidewalks in Lyons Falls, which was a no-no, but people did it, But yeah, that used to be open before the Stewart's was even there.
No kidding. It's just funny how all that stuff changes throughout time.
And doesn't it seem like where'd the time go?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I remember when that used to be Bon Fair, the
Right.
Stewart's, and before that it was the Sunoco station down in town, where Little Friend's vet was.
Yes.
But when I think about how long ago that was well over 20 years ago.
Oh
now.
Yeah.
Where is it gone?
Yeah. Well,
how old are you?
I'm 39.
39.
Well, I'll be
okay.
39 here in another month and a half.
I'm 36.
Yeah.
And you went to Lowville?
Yeah,
okay.
I went to Lowville.
Okay, so you know Ryan Bush.
Oh yeah, Chewy, absolutely.
That's
he was
cousin.
he's one of my good friends. Lived up on Lily Pond Road.
Yep.
Oh
man, we used to drive up there all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to. Yeah, because Lisa was a little bit younger than me.
Yep.
Actually, I think she's
a year older than me, so she'd be 37.
Right.
Yep.
So she's just technically right now I'm 38 because I think that she graduated in '99, and I graduated in '98, and then Ryan I think was
maybe a year or two older.
Yeah, right around there.
Yep.
But again, I mean, we used to have.
Branningham was awesome. I mean, it's still awesome.
And it's like one of those things. Just like I don't even remember how I even met Ryan. He went to South Louis. I went to Lowville.
Yeah. No, he went to Lowville later on because they moved to Lowville for a couple years. Oh. So I think for his last 2 years of school, maybe they were in Lowville. And then I think they moved back. I'm not sure.
Gotcha.
But, yeah.
Because I can remember going to Ryan's house when they lived
and now he's up flying planes in Alaska.
Yeah, up in Alaska, I know. I sit there and I see that and I just think, you're such a dick. Why are you posting that stuff, man? This is awesome. I'm so happy for him. Because you want everybody to succeed, you know. Yeah. But when your friends are doing cool things like that and you're like, man, you know, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I've got somebody in my graduating class, and I'm not even sure if it's true or not, but I've heard from a couple friends that he works for the FBI.
Oh, no kidding.
And anytime I see somebody that I graduate, or just one of your peers doing that incredibly well,
right,
it just makes you feel like crap. It's like, oh, man. But I have the best parents in the world, and they're always like, we're so proud of you. Oh, you could be way more proud. I could be doing so much more with my life.
Well, yeah, but we all think that. But, you know, in the end,
it's all in what you want to do in life and how much free time. And as you know, and I would like to get into this because we're, you know, the 3/4 of the way done with this, but family is very important.
Oh, absolutely.
And so when you have kids, you can't really go work for the FBI. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, you can, you know, but and it depends on how much time you want to devote to your family and have free to be able to do that.
Right.
Rationed with how much money you need to be able to do that.
Right, exactly. Well, you know, and that's one of the things, too. You're absolutely right. I mean, just like with myself, my wife, Chris, and I, we started our family very young. I mean, I think when Brookie was born, I was 21 years old. Mm-hmm. You know, so, I mean, that's by nowadays, that's very young to start a family. I mean, she's going to be a senior this year.
30 years ago, that was not old at all.
But now, and a lot of the people that I went to high school with, you know, they were just started having their kids when they were 30, which, you know, it's a double-edged sword being one way or the other. I mean, but like my dad, I mean, he was 30 years old when I was born. Mm-hmm. And I remember how tired and worn out I was when I was 30 years old. I said, there's no way in hell I could have had a kid, you know, when I was 30 years old. I just don't have that kind of energy. I say that, you know, jokingly, but, it, you know, I guess it just kind of goes with that. But you're absolutely right. As far as family, it's difficult when you start a family and you're young, and to be able to get to places. I mean, because you know, yes, there's different places in the world, there's different jobs, there's different things I would like to be. I mean, you know, eventually, I would like to be able to I'd like to work for American Honda Motor Company. I absolutely love Honda. They're a wonderful company, and I would like to be at some part of that, whether it's a district rep somewhere throughout this country. Terry Tiss knows it. Jared knows it. Mm-hmm. You know, they know that's what I would like to do. I would like to have that opportunity at some point. Mm-hmm. However, every 4 years, you have to move to a different location. I would never be around here.
Right.
You know, Brooke is a senior this year. I don't know where she's going to end up in college. Mm-hmm. You know, here, Pennsylvania, wherever it's going to be. You know, Sky's got 5 more years of school left, so we're kind of limited to what we can do because you know you always got to put your family first.
You got to have roots for the kids. It seems like, because if they go off to college, even getting married and going on with their life, they need a home to come back to.
That's
because
right.
You always have a home,
right?
But your parents' home is always your home.
Oh,
you know what I mean? I slip up every once in a while. Yeah, we're going home this week. Oh, to my parents' house this week, you know?
Right.
And it's nice to have that for the kids.
Absolutely.
But I'm sure once they're out of the house and well into their lives, you're going to be like, okay, now I can.
And luckily, you know,
by starting the motorcycle out.
Right. By starting a family that young, you know, like, you know, when Sky, 45 years old is extremely young nowadays. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really is. I mean, even 60. I mean, it's really funny because, like, my dad is going to be 70 next year, but to me, he doesn't seem like he's 70.
Right.
I mean, the guy's still. It's just like I look at him, you know, and he says something to him, like, oh, but he doesn't look any different to me than he did when he was 40.
Right.
You know, he still is very active, you know, doing carpentry. Like, he's restoring a 1967 Scout, and he's doing all these cool things, and he's, you know, and he's like the things like that I would think I would need help with, like, oh man, I should call somebody. And then all of a sudden my dad does something that's way harder, and he did it all by himself. I'm like, what the hell's wrong with me? You know what I mean? The guy's 70 years old, but I don't know if it's his generation thing or whatever it is. And, you know, same thing with your dad. I mean, you know.
See, my dad, now that he's, you know, well, he's been sick for a long time, but it also took me a long time to really fully comprehend it.
Yeah.
Because I always say, well, when I'm 60, I'm going to do this and that. And I'm sure at my age, my dad's thought the same thing. At 60, I'm going to be doing this and that.
Right.
And so it's nice to think that years when I retire, you might not retire.
Right. You might never get that chance.
You might not get there, or you might end up working until you're 80 years old. We're in a generation where we don't know what's to come. I mean, people now are retiring at 72, 75.
Right.
Can you imagine 75? When we're at 75, it's going to be 80, 85 because we're living longer, we're healthier.
Yeah.
So it's hard to think about the future with any sort of reality at all about it. But you got to have hope, and you got to, have those goals ahead of you.
I think Ricky Bobby said it best, at my high level income and in today's modern medical, there's no reason why I can't live to be 250, 300 years old.
What was it? I heard somewhere that they think that a person already born will live to be 150, and that's realistic.
No kidding.
That's a realistic goal for somebody to be 150. I mean, well, now I forget what the record is, but it's like 100. I want to say it's like 117 years old.
Yeah.
Now you got to imagine at 100, you're like, I can die anytime.
Right.
And then to live another 17 years.
Why would you wanna?
I mean, if you had your health and you could get around and you're mentally with it, even if you were just mentally with it,
right?
I think it would be worth it to have the. I mean, you don't know until you're at 100.
Yeah.
You might say, now, I lived 100, I'm good. But then you get to 100, and I don't want to die now.
Right.
Exactly. I got a little bit left in me.
Right.
But
no, I tell you, it's really, it's like one of the things that I've taught, that I've tried to tell my kids, since they're young. You have to work hard, and you have to go ahead and you have to push yourself. I mean, yes, I'm kind of strict. I'm kind of
but you got girls.
I do. Well,
you have to be strict.
Well, yes, but I always told my girls, and I have a very open relationship. Like I tell them, what I'm thinking, why I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. Listen, you two have to work harder. You have to, the difference between being good and great is a little extra effort, because there's more people coming into this world than what there is going out of this world. Mm-hmm. If you want to go ahead, and there's only so many jobs, there's only so much, of whatever to go around, so if you want to have a nice house, if you want to be successful, if this is what you want, if you want to have all of these things, then you have to work harder and be better than the next person. That 10th of a point might be the difference between you getting into the college you want to get into, that's going to make the difference for the rest of your life, or not. You just don't ever know what it's going to be. Right. So you can never settle for good enough. Right. Nothing can ever be good enough. And they get upset at me because, nothing is ever good enough. I'll go upstairs and Sky cleans her room, and I'll be able to sit there and get on her ass, and she'll be like, but Dad, it's good enough. No, Sky. Attention to details. Mm-hmm. It's what's going to make the difference between you and somebody else when push comes to shove. Who wants to be better? Mm-hmm. You or them? Who, and they look at me like I got 3 cats, but why wouldn't they? Yeah. They're 16 and 13 years old.
Did the same thing
but
to your
I
parents.
Get it. Yeah. Right, but I get it. Mm-hmm. But same thing, I can, like the difference between being good and great comes from when I was 12 years old, and Dick DeFone was my defensive football coach, and that was in the back of our playbooks. I've never forgot that. Oh my God,
he's such a great guy.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But I've learned so much about the things that didn't make sense back then. Mm-hmm. Make sense now. I go back and watch my old football tapes, and Dale DeLong, Dick DeFone, yelling. Not yelling at me. They said, we'll never yell at you. We will yell to you. Well, I told my kids that when I coached level Pop Warner football, and half of them quit. Yeah. They literally jumped in their mom's cars one night because, again, it was one of those things. It was later on in the season, and where we had to practice, we had no lights, so time was of the essence. Mm-hmm. And they'd get to practice, they'd be kind of screwing around. So I told the guys, listen, when I say practice is at 5:30, that means that you're in your calisthenics lines ready to go at 5:30. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that you're just walking down, hanging out in the pavilion. You're in your. That's what this means. And for every minute that you guys are late, it's a lap you have to run. Well, I was on my way in because it was a Friday night. I still met on a Thursday night. My friend Travis Kovac was my assistant coach. He calls me up. I was on my way in. He goes, Tim, we got a problem. I said, why? He goes, because I just made the kids run because they were 5 minutes late. He goes, and half of them went over their kids or in their mom's vehicles and left. you would have never got away with that when I was a kid. No way, no how, not happening.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was just...
What is with the next generation? I feel so old saying that all the
I know,
time. You know,
and it's never going to stop, though, Tony.
With people being late. That's one thing that drives me nuts more than anything, because I go out of my way to always be... Like, I get to work 20 minutes early to make a pot of coffee, turn the computer on, you know, see what I got for work for the day, and get started.
Right.
And that's the way my parents always raised me. You know, you get to work early. And when there's downtime, you grab a broom, and there's always something to do.
You got time to lean, you got time to clean.
And I'm not saying it's all of them, but you see that a lot more in the next generations.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't bother them at all to be late. They're like it's a normal thing now.
Right.
I hate that.
Oh yeah, it drives me nuts. And even at work, you know, I mean, again, the same thing, you know, I mean, my parents have always been everywhere early. Like, you know, if there's a party that started at 1, they were there at 12:50. You know, I can remember when I went to Boy State, there was a thing that the Marines had told us. If you're 10 minutes early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're 10 minutes late. And that's really what it comes down to. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. It drives me bonkers because, you know, especially like with our business, you know, like our mechanics and the whole 9 yards, I mean, or everybody, I mean, there's always so much to do. You know, I mean, and if you have kids, and if there's underlying circumstances why you can't be there early, but a lot of these kids are single and the whole 9 yards. Well, they get there at 8:30 and they don't get moving until 9 o'clock or whatever. I'm like, you know, guys, why can't you get here at 8? You know, why can't you get here at 8 and go ahead and punch, you know, and even punch and start putting machines out, you know, because if our work day starts from 8:30 till 5, that means that you are billing hours and working from 8:30 until 5.
And that's what gets me about people being late, because time is your life. Right. I mean, every 5 minutes is 5 minutes of your life that is gone. It's past. Right. So when somebody makes you wait, when somebody is late and you're there on time, they are taking that time, they are taking life away from you. Right. You're sitting there waiting when you could be, you know, and that way whatever you got to do is going to run 5 minutes later. Right. And that's 5 minutes more that you could be spending with your family or, you know. Absolutely. I don't get how it's not a big deal to be late anymore. Right.
Time is not renewable.
And I've had plenty of people that were late for this podcast, and they're probably listening thinking, what a jerk I am. But I'm sitting home these nights with nothing better to do, and that's why it's a generic thing. You were all worried, you know.
I was freaking
you were here,
out.
what, 10 minutes early or 5 minutes early?
I was 5 minutes early. Yeah. No, and I told you, like I said, you know, you got it.
Text me.
Text me. I said, remind me at 6:40. I'll be there at 7 o'clock. Remind me at 6:40. And I was right.
All I want is that text, hey, I'm on my way. Right. You know, that's all I care about. It doesn't matter what time it is for these podcasts, you know. But just text me. I'm on, or hey, I'm leaving in 15 minutes. That way I got 15 minutes to go, you know, hang out with my daughter or go do this rather than wait by the door. Right. You know, but
yeah, and kind of, like you said, you know, common courtesy. You know, I mean, just a heads up, a simple. It's just a lot of those things. I don't know where it comes from. Yeah. You know, I really don't know where it comes from. Like, I just don't know where that whole thing has gone to. You know, simple. Hey, I'm going to be here, there, or, you know, it just seems like nobody wants to be held accountable for anything anymore. You're like, well, I don't need to answer to you. No, wait a minute. You can't. It's wrong. It's taking out of your life to be able to shoot me a heads up that you're going to be late or that you're not going to come at all or that something came up because you know, for what? Yeah.
Shit, I text my mom when we go down there every Sunday and, you know, varying times. But if I tell her a certain time and we're running late, I'll text her, hey, you know, we're running late, even though it's not for a meal or anything, but just so she knows and doesn't worry, right? You know, and I think that's what it was, you know, when we're growing up. It's your mom worrying.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
That's why you can't be late to anything. It's because your mom will worry.
Right. No, and same thing. Well, I mean, no different. I mean, Brooke is 16 years old, and you know, so now that she has her license and she's driving, and trying to be able to get there because there is so many things that can go wrong. There is people on the road. There is, you know, delays.
And every minute she's late is one more gray hair you got.
Well, not in my case because I don't have any hair, but
it's just migrating downward. That's
all.
That's
right. That's what it is.
I'll give you some of mine. I got plenty.
Yep.
Yeah. It's. Man, and I'm just at the beginning of having a girl, she's only 4, so I haven't hit the really fun parts.
Well, the fact
yet.
that you even have any hair and she's 4, you're doing pretty well. You must have yourself a good one there.
Yeah. I think I'll just always have hair. That's the issue, because the stress is there, believe me. But so I really look up to people like you that have older girls, and I mean 16. I'm not looking forward to those years whatsoever.
Well, my biggest thing is, at least the way I approached it was, I'm pretty liberal.
Mm-hmm.
Not to brag, but Brooks has, she's on the high honor roll. She's a 3-sport all-star athlete. Really don't have much to worry about for the most part. So therefore, my rule of thumb is, if you don't give me a reason to tell you no, then I won't.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't give me a reason not to trust you, or whatever. So, and she appreciates that, because I can remember back when I was a kid, it was no different for me. I mean, like I said, I was all over Lewis County, from my house to Harrisville on three-wheeler. And that didn't necessarily happen because I was an irresponsible hellraiser. No, it was because I let my parents know where I was going, what my plans were, and I never really got into too much trouble. Maybe a little bit here.
Well, you did hang out with Villeneuve, so.
Well, yeah.
I hope he listens to this.
Right. Villainer. There's a story behind that, back when we worked at CER Towers together, and that's for another podcast.
Well, we'll definitely have to do it again then. Maybe we'll get him to join us.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, man.
Oh, that would be a blast.
I think we should have a podcast of just 4-wheeler stories or 3-wheeler stories.
Oh, we should get myself, Hookie, who's
sponsored
Aaron
by
Woodrick.
Loudville.
That's right. That's right. And Brian Villeneuve, because between the 3 of us.
Who?
Aaron Woodrick, who's Hookie.
Yeah.
And Brian Villeneuve and myself.
Throw Josh Clark in the mix and we're all set.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. See, it's funny because, I never really met or knew Josh until I think he started building stuff. Well, actually, did Josh work at CER? I think he might have started at CER about the time I was leaving, so that was quite a few years ago. But
I always, whenever I run into him, I see that smile on his face. It's like, oh, what kind of shit are we going to get into?
Right.
It was always, we'd go over to his house. Hey, you want to jump over the fence and ride the cow?
Oh, my God.
And for years and years, it was always my excuse, I don't have insurance. So I don't want to, go to the hospital with a broken arm and spend 10 grand, so that was my excuse. And then my wife told him the one day, hey, we got insurance now. Oh, shut up.
Oh, there was a reason why.
How many times I've seen that guy naked on a 3-wheeler?
What could go wrong there, right?
That's a great idea for
naked
podcast.
On a 3-wheeler? That's a terrible idea.
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm onto something.
Oh, okay, good. Woo, scared me there for a minute.
Only Josh thinks that's a good idea.
Right.
But a wheeler reminiscing podcast, I think. Wheeler,
there's
stories.
many stories to be told. Yeah, absolutely.
I used to have a YZ80.
You did?
Yep. I was maybe 13 or 14.
Yeah.
And I remember it was the very first dirt bike I ever bought because I collected baseball cards when I was a kid, which back in our day, didn't everyone collect baseball cards?
Yeah, I still have 10,000. I thought that was maybe retirement, and they're not worth the paper they were printed on.
Yeah, just like McDonald's toys and Beanie Babies.
Yeah.
They ain't worth shit.
Well, some of them are, but
no, they're not.
No? Really? That's too bad.
That's clickbait, man.
Is it?
That's Facebook clickbait. None of them are worth anything. No, but I sold my, I remember we had a garage sale and I sold my entire baseball collection. And I remember I had 148 Nolan Ryan cards because he was
Are you serious?
Man.
Oh, yeah.
And
the Texas Express.
Yeah. No hitters. Oh.
Yep.
No one beats Nolan
7
Ryan.
of them. Yeah.
What was your team when you were a kid?
I never really had. I never actually, probably more the Atlanta Braves.
Mm-hmm.
The reason being is because when we lived in town, we had TBS,
mm-hmm.
and we didn't have MSG. Madison Square Garden didn't come on, so the Atlanta Braves were about the only team that you could ever watch. So I can remember sitting in our living room watching Atlanta Braves games because back then, that's like with Tom Glavine.
Yeah.
Was it Avery?
Catcher?
No, he was a pitcher. He was he had the one arm.
Oh, Jim Abbott.
Jim Abbott. Yep. So you had Tom Glavine, Jim Abbott, and then there was another Avery that was of course you had David Justice was back then.
Justice, that's who I was going to say. Yep.
So they had a great team. So it was really cool. So I guess if I had to really kind of pick a baseball team, that's kind of who it was.
I remember my uncle didn't collect baseball cards, but he got one somehow and gave it to me. and it was the coolest baseball card I'd ever seen. It was a sticker, and it was a hologram.
Yes, from the old Topps cards.
Oh my God. And it was Toronto Blue Jays logo.
Yep.
And from that moment on, I was a Blue Jays fan because of that one baseball card
no kidding.
sticker. And I think I kept that. I think it's somewhere within this house.
Yeah.
And then the next year, they won the World Series like 2 years in a row.
Oh,
so
okay.
I was proud to be a Blue Jays fan.
A Blue Jays fan, sure.
I haven't watched baseball since probably those
and
World
really,
Series.
Right. No, same way. You know, of course, back when I was collecting baseball cards, it was in the late 80s, early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said,
Don
I really
Russ
think...
and Topps.
Oh, yeah, Don Russ and Topps.
Upper
So
Deck.
back then, well, see, you remember, did you ever go to Tim Rubart? He had the baseball card store.
Where the Chinese... next to the Chinese place in town, right?
No, that one, this was in a little hole in the wall next to where, like, the Journal, like, next to Baker's down through that way somewhere. What the heck?
Was it next to What's the Scoop?
Yes, it was. It was next to What's the Scoop. Yes,
place.
Because what I would do is I would go to Tim's and sell some of my baseball cards, and then I go to What's the Scoop to Doug Handel's place and spend all my money on ice cream.
Oh
yeah,
that was the place to go.
Yep.
Parents as reading partners.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And they'd give you tickets if you read all the books in school.
Yep.
Tickets to What's the Scoop.
Right.
And the Port Florist, the video rental place in Lions Falls.
Oh, okay.
Oh man, used to rent Nintendo games from there.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, now we're getting too nostalgic. We'll have to save this for another one.
There you go.
Tim, this was great.
This was a great time. Absolutely. Thank you, Tony. I really appreciate the invite. Had a great time.
Let's go check out that bike.
Yeah, let's do that.
Thanks for listening to Tony and Other People, a podcast. Questions, comments, concerns for Tony's overall well-being? Want to be part of the show? Find us on Facebook or email us at tonyandotherpeople@gmail.com.